are here to talk about what we're doing with clearing ourselves of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides.
Chemicals are in the back, and aisle 18 is where the organics are. John Bogert, I was hired by Scott over here in 2013 because I think he had an inkling that we were kindred spirits in the switching over to the organic methods. The first thing was to banish the low-hanging fruit. The first thing to go was the neonicotinoid insecticides as totally incompatible with organic methods or any common sense. You know, it doesn't make any sense to put a pesticide on everything before you know whether it has a problem or not. Let me show you this. The chemicals are now down to about 8 feet. It's not product-based. It's not product swap-off. It's more of a cultural thing to do. Right?
Holistic approach.
It's a holistic approach. So that brought me down to what is the holistic part of it, and it comes down to soil, the life in the soil. We talked about microbes. The first section I wanted people to see was talking about the living soil. Here's where we're going to put our microbial simulators. We get the soil testers, beneficial insects down below.
Science behind the soil. It's not as simple as just putting one product down and expecting everything to turn out well. It's a finely balanced system.
That's where the soil test comes in.
Which is quite difficult, I think. It's been difficult to get the importance of doing a soil test to find out where you stand. The organic fertilizers will feed the microbes, as will compost. The crux of that is organic material. There is no organic material in Miracle-Gro or any soluble fertilizer. There's no organic material in there. Organic material is what feeds the microbes. The microbes turn that into products that can be used by the roots of the plant.
Well, our vegetable and flower seeds we get from High Mowing Farm in Vermont. We also get some out of Iowa from Seed Savers. And Johnny Selected Seeds, Fedco.
You've also developed your own greenhouse.
We have. Well, we wanted to provide organic seedlings primarily for vegetable seedlings, but we also did flowers this year, hanging baskets, and on and on. And people loved it. They came from all over to get something that didn't necessarily have neonicotinoids in it. And you know, anyone serious about organics has a hard job finding a hanging basket that isn't infused with neonics. Most of those seeds are hybrids. And that can be good in many ways, but we kind of like the flavor of stuff that was grown 200 years ago.
The hybridization process can weaken, it looks for certain traits, but it can also weaken other traits.
And what I've found in growing some corn is that it doesn't attract the bugs like the hybrids do, the super sweet varieties.
They are terrified of the white grubs stealing their lawn. Trying to explain to people leaving your grass higher makes it less apt that the larvae, that they're going to want to plant a larvae in there. Leaving your grass drier. She doesn't want to plant, Japanese beetle doesn't want to plant her eggs in a dry lawn. She wants a moist environment.
This year it's been largely or overwhelmingly positive. I really only had a few people that were disappointed we didn't carry the products they were used to.
I just got back from the ACE fall show, and I was pleasantly surprised to see a lot more organic product on display there. And it really took me kind of by surprise.
A lot of these things are yet to be available. As more people want them, they become available.
Because they knew we had the organic section, and when they saw it, they just focused on what they were here for. They picked out the varieties they wanted and left with them very happy. You're protecting the environment, and you're protecting your family, your children or grandchildren, or your neighbors. Nobody wants to have pesticides drifting into their front or rear yard, and people are just loving it. They're feeding into it. I couldn't be happier.
So I'll try to direct you to the right people and answer what I know. I've been doing it about 20 years, and I think we can shed some light. As far as herding animals go, domestic animals, they are the best. you'll see state forestry, federal forestry, city open space, and HOA and fire departments. And everybody's doing it for a certain reason, and everyone has a different price, but they won't hire you if you're more expensive. So that we don't burn the open space. It's just recently turning that if we can't defend it, it turns into a catastrophe because there's too much density. You're as safe, you're as good as your neighbor. Your neighbor could be the next city, it could be the next block, it could literally be your neighbor. But if you have an invasive problem there, it's going to blow in here. If you got a fire a mile away, it's going to blow in here. A living fuel break by far is better than clear-cut vegetation. The ember's blowing like a freeway, there's nothing there to wick it away, there's nothing to suppress it. It'll go into some other area that's just waiting for it to ignite and stoke up. These areas, naturally abated with living fuel breaks, will wick that out, and then it becomes a firewall. The living plants that are there, they be scorched, it decreases to not transferring, and then it runs its way out. You give a fireman a chance. The other thing is pathogens. The droppings don't emit pathogens like does a cat dropping, a dog dropping, or a ground squirrel. It is a chemical processing machine, and when they're done with it, those droppings are what we want to say is nitrogen neutral. You have 4 ground squirrels. They will give you about a half an ounce of droppings for 4 ground squirrels. You have 200 goats. Each goat eats about 10 pounds per day. Okay, 200 goats will give you a ton of droppings, a whole ton, get lifted. That half ounce has more pathogens, bacteria, than a ton of goat droppings. 1 dog dropping has more pathogens than a ton, 200 goats. 1 cat dropping has more pathogens than over 300 goats. So if you're trying to see the impact to bacteria in storm drains in the ocean and bays, it's very minuscule to the living things that are already there. If you're talking about neutral, invent something better, you'll be beyond rich. There's nothing wrong if you pick up a goat dropping, smash it between your fingers, and you'll see it's basically ground powder. They extract all the fatty, essential amino acids from it they can. They want all the oil and protein they can from that plant, and they extrapolate that as good as any animal can. Maybe the best point, when a goat actually eats the seed, the way it works, it grinds the seed, and no seed, there's not 1 full percentage of a seed that will grow out of all the droppings. You won't get 1% of the plant, of the viable plant to grow from a goat dropping. So if you have 100 seeds, you'll have 0 plants. You have 1,000 seeds, you might have 1 plant. So that's a pretty good ratio if you want to eat invasive seeds and not have it regenerate. It's not like a cow or a horse or any other animal leaves more seeds behind. They emit the least methane, that's a whole other topic. They emit the least pathogens, and they use the least amount of protein to sustain themselves. That's why around the world, the most protein used in the world is goat meat, or goat, because they can sustain themselves on the cheapest type of foliage with protein than any other animal and give a return. So it exceeds most people's expectations. That's why it's sustained around the world.
They're just so quiet.
I know, like they're just minding their own business.
I mean, there's a snort here and there, but nothing.
That's the thing. If you can work with it and you're willing to have a work ethic, it works out. And then at the end of the project, the number one thing that all these HOAs, and you can call any of them, they loved the goats.